What am I working with? Dan, you have to take a finger.
I feel for you all.
If you can do that, you'll only lose by 20.
Now then, your weekly dose of NFL is back for a brand new season, and we've got a shiny new format and shiny new people to say hi to. Introductions and a season preview on the way.
It's incredibly boring.
How is that boring?
Carry on.
Shut up, you. If anybody mentions Taylor Swift, it's a straight red card and a 2-pod ban. We got everything right last week.
Yeah, cruised it last week.
Pretty sure I only got one wrong.
Professional, one wrong.
Unbelievable. I tell you what, it's Harry. Press the button.
Yes, welcome along. It's a brand new season. Let's do the introduction, shall we? First up, he's a man we all know and love, and only one of those statements is true. He's like an unexploded World War II bomb. He requires specialist handling, and it's a miracle he hasn't blown up in our faces already. It's our very own Ginger Viking, Dave Keane. You all right, mate?
Yeah, where did that come from? I'm the soul of gentility, mate. Peaceful. People always mistake me as a hippie. You know that.
Oh, I gave him an instruction, one sentence only. Failed. Up next, it's a man who's got more NFL playing experience than Aaron Rodgers had minutes last season. He's a baby Keane, but has Turkish ancestry. So keep your daughters locked up tight or he'll whisk them off for a holiday romance he has no intention of seeing through when he gets home. It's little Ollie Keane. Hello, mate.
It's not true, ladies.
Yeah, it is. There's a newbie in the house today, and because I don't know him very well, I can't think of anything clever to say other than if he's friends with the other two, we're all fucked. It's Jim Sumner.
All right.
Brilliant. Right, enough of this. Let's talk football, shall we? This is Utter Punts. Oh, we've started the season as we mean to go on. I've offended everybody inside the opening 2 minutes of the programme, and I am quite concerned that we're going to end up with the Turkish army outside my house ready to kick my head in, especially as, in my day job, Manchester United are facing Fenerbahce again in the Europa League this season. I am screwed. Dave, how are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. I am good. Like we covered off a little bit of the off season while you boys were having your fun and jolly sabbaticals, and yeah, all in all, like it was good. It was brilliant right up until the only team I care about had one or two moments. But yeah, now you're making me talk about the others.
It wasn't exactly as you wanted the Vikings off season to go, was it, mate?
No. I mean, like, no, we'll get the serious bit out of the way because then we can laugh at the rest. But Kyrie Jackson passed away in a tragic car crash. The guy, when he was drafted, said he was the best cornerback in the draft, and a lot of people kind of laughed. But I'll tell you something, it looked like he was going to fulfill that potential. 6'3" cornerback. Looked like he was going to go on to do great things in the game, and definitely was going to make the 53 this year. And indeed, I think he was going to make the starting 11 based on who we've had to bring in since then. So yeah, best wishes to all of his friends and family. An absolute tragedy, and yeah, we'll put that bit aside. Just needed to mention that because that kind of forms the backdrop for the rest of everything that happened, which is everybody getting injured for the rest of the season. So.
Look, we will talk more about the Vikings as we go through. We'll explain sort of the format of the program as well as we carry on, because we're having a little bit of a change on Utter Punts this season. We're going to do the stuff that we really enjoy doing and less of the stuff that felt like a drag. So we'll explain that to you once we've said hello to everybody. Ollie is up next. Hello, mate.
You all right, mate? How's it going?
Yeah, good. You had a good summer?
It's been all right, yeah. I mean, for once, English football isn't disappointing me, and NFL is disappointing me. It's usually the reverse. So, yeah, I mean,
Hey.
Like I said, like Dave said, the Vikings have had the best and worst off season of my life. It's a real weird mix of emotions in terms of NFL, but I never thought I'd say this. At least I've got Birmingham City to cheer me up, so Yeah, it's been alright.
It's been well weird.
Where has that come from at the start of the season? Absolutely astonishing. It's such a shame that this is a American football podcast and we can't talk about it.
Well, the good things.
Yeah. We have a newbie in our ranks. Well, I say a newbie. He's a newbie to the main pod. You will have seen him in the off-season for those of you that have been listening to our close season podcasts and bits and pieces. Big Jim Sumner's here. Hello, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good, mate. Nice to be here.
Yeah, you're just back from your sunny holidays. Jet lagged, tired?
Oh, mate, horrific. I was in Tagovailoa land in Hawaii for a week, and Vegas and LA and everything else in between. So, yeah, I don't know what day it is, what time it is. I've been to sleep for 4 hours this afternoon as I got grief about not doing what I needed to do. So, yeah, all in all, it's been a bit of a baptism of fire, and we are literally 90 seconds in. So, please, glad to be here.
Yeah, look, baptism of fire is about right as well, considering that complexion does not tally with Hawaii's weather, does it?
Oh, it's been filtered out, mate. Trust me. His complexion tallies with Hawaii's weather. He looked like a lobster on Saturday.
It's the big ring light that I've got going. It just washes me out, mate.
Yeah.
You know, I'll make sure to get the makeup right on the next one.
Yeah, and keep that sunburn well hidden, won't you? Right, look. What we're going to do today is we were trying to figure out a way of previewing every team in a way that was interesting and didn't drag on forever and ever. Unfortunately, we failed at that because the draft for the mechanic that we were going to use has already dragged on for longer than the history of man. It was unbelievable. It's taken about 48 hours in total for 4 people to draw 32 teams. Absolutely astonishing.
I take 76% of the responsibility for that as well.
Yes, that's a very specific percentage. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Look, Dave, this was your idea, so I'm going to let you explain exactly what it is that we're trying to do over the course of, well, I say over the course of this podcast, but actually, if you're watching on YouTube, it's a series of 3 that will be released over the course of the week. If you're listening on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from, you'll be able to listen to it in one big long podcast that you can keep coming back to. Dave, what can people expect?
So, if you recall last year, we played a stock market game where myself, you, and Dan had to pick 3 teams who we thought were going to improve, and then 1 team that we thought were going to go backwards. And we had a little game. It was a warm up, really. There was nothing much to it. Dan won the warm up, and like basically, well done, Dan. Warm ups count for nothing, mate. Anyway, so now that we've sort of path found with that year, and we've gone down the route of really enhancing the offering. So instead, what we've got is, you, Liam, are going to be representing Dan today, but you are actually just going to be passing on the picks that Dan is going to be making, right? And you are in a position where you can give an honest view on what Dan wants you to do. You can basically slam him because Dan isn't here to defend himself, so it's open season. Love you, Dan. So basically, we're going to be taking it in turns, a snake draft, to go through the entire league. And what we're looking to do is we're looking to choose the teams that we think are going to improve the most over the course of the season based on last year's finishing positions. So, for example, Carolina Panthers were the worst team in the league. They're at number 1 overall, and they currently have 1 point's worth of stock for that fact, the fact that they're the worst team in the league. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs, the best team in the league, they currently have 32 points in stock. And what we want to do is to basically accumulate as much additional stock over the course of this season as possible, based on choosing teams who we think are going to improve, or, as you'll find out as the draft goes on, teams that we think are going to regress the least out of the available options left. And it basically means we're tackling this in a illogical order, if you like. It's not based on the divisions. It's just based on our opinions as to who is going to be the biggest improvers this season. So as we start off, you're going to be hearing the teams that we think are going to improve. And then as we get towards the end, you'll probably hear the teams that we think might regress a little bit, or just based on the fact they've already done incredibly well, they can't really improve. All they can really do is tread water. Now, we'll have graphics on the YouTube videos to support this. just to allow you to see what's going on as we go along. Obviously, if you're listening, it's going to be an opportunity for you to just hear our opinions of pretty much every team and place as much stock in that as you want. But we're competing here with a genuine competition that we all want to win. There will be a prize or a forfeit.
Oh, I didn't know this. Although my forfeit is clearly the graphics that are going on the YouTube video, because nobody told me I needed to do that. There's another 2 hours work this evening. Thank you very much indeed, Dave Key. Right, let's have a little conversation about the first 10 picks then, shall we? So the draft order, Dave, was Dan, Ollie, you, Jim, in that order. And we've had a snake draft, so that means that Dan gets back-to-back picks at one end, Jim gets back-to-back picks at the other end, and Dave and Ollie have been somewhere in the middle. Luck of the draft. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for you, but essentially the long and the short of it is we've got a snake draft order, and this is how it came out. Dan was the first person to make a pick. So Dan had to choose the team that he thought was going to improve the most over the course of this season. And Dan's first pick, who will be back further down the line, he's just he's having a couple of weeks doing a couple of bits and pieces that require doing, in life admin. But hopefully we'll have him back in the not too distant future. He picked the Falcons, and this was the blurb that he sent to me. Right?
Yep.
Shite division, but one of them has to win it, and they're much lower than the Saints and the Bucks, so an obvious pick. Cousins is the best quarterback in that division now, and they will have no primetime games for him to screw up. I have a funny feeling, if I was to give my gut opinion of this pick, it's actually a pick just to piss Dave off, I think. Specifically the line, Cousins is the best quarterback in that division now. It was almost designed perfectly to blow Dave's mind.
I mean, he thinks that. All he's done is make himself look silly. For one thing, Kirk Cousins is coming off an Achilles injury last year. He might well be back. He might well be throwing. How long can we hope that his injury, which happened far later than the Aaron Rodgers injury, by the way, how can we hope that he's going to be 100%? He's also got Michael Penix Jr. sitting in the background there, who was drafted number 8 overall, much to Kirk's horror, shock and surprise. And trust me, Kirk Cousins does not do well with any kind of pressure behind him, which is why the Vikings never had a decent backup QB the entire time he was at the Vikings. So, I'm glad Dan did this. It's a mistake. It's going to be brilliantly good fun when that blows up in his face. I don't see them improving that much until the rookie comes in. And by then it will probably be too late. That's my view.
Okay. Jim, is this a mistake from Dan, or is this actually quite an astute pick?
I just want to say before we get started, I love Kirk Cousins. He has provided me with some absolute joy watching Dave and Ollie's pure peril over the last couple of years. It's been amazing to watch, especially from a Browns fan, to watch other people in just absolute misery. Misery loves company and all that. So, yeah. In terms of a logic of the pick, a little bit more objectively, I think we can look at it and go, you know what, Kirk Cousins may probably be the best quarterback in that division that they've got now. So I actually don't think it's a bad pick. I think it was a fairly safe pick, to be honest. I think he could have gone a little bit more interesting. But he's not here, so I could say what I like. But yeah, I think it's just a case of he's going to be the best quarterback in the division, so it's not an issue. So I'm on board with that one, and I was quite not surprised when I saw it come through.
Oh.
It feels like the draft the previous year, because I have the number 2 overall pick, and I feel like I got CJ Stroud and Dan got Bryce Young. I think it was a waste of a number 1 overall pick. I don't think Kirk Cousins is the best quarterback in that division.
This is my favourite thing that's ever happened to Dave in my entire life. So
I wasn't paying attention.
What the best thing was, I couldn't figure out whether you'd fallen over or whether the camera had fallen over. And I'll be honest,
did you think it was me?
I'm slightly disappointed it was the camera.
It would have been funnier. Yeah.
I am slightly disappointed. Are you rebalanced? Are you sorted, mate?
Hope so.
Good. Where were we? Ollie, were you talking or was I saying something?
I was talking.
Good. You carry on then, mate.
So I think it's a waste of a pick. I think Kirk Cousins isn't the best quarterback in that league. I think he may be fighting for second best with Derek Carr. I think Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback in that division. In fact, I think there's a chance Michael Penix Jr. will end up being better than him. But the Falcons have made some improvements. That is true. Simmons, they brought in the safety from Denver. They've had a couple of good additions in free agency. They also brought the Patriots pass rusher as well. Got 4 sacks in 4 games last year. I forgot his name, but he Matthew Judon. But he got injured. So, can he stay fit? He's quite old. They've paid quite a bit of money for him. It seems like a team who is trying to go for it now, but maybe they're not going for it in the right way. I don't think that they'll regress. I don't think that, but I think it's a waste of a number 1 overall pick with some of the other teams that are here in this.
Who did they have at QB last year? Was it Taylor Heineke and Tyler Heineke or whatever his name is?
Desmond Ridder. Yeah.
So yeah, I think either way you look at it, with Penix Jr. and Cousins, that's a massive upgrade in the area. And I think, look, let's be honest, if Kirk Cousins fails, then that's the end of that regime in Atlanta after 1 year. To be honest with you, you don't spend 180 million on a quarterback with 100 million guaranteed and expect to stand still. So yeah, if
and then pick his 25-year-old replacement.
Well, yeah, and that's obviously that was.
I think he's great. I do think he's great.
I think he's great as well. That's why they haven't played him in the preseason, because he was looking better than Kirk was. So it's an interesting one. But yeah, we'll have to see how it goes. But I don't think it's a bad pick. I'm a little bit more objective than former Kirk Cousins haters. Well, current Kirk Cousins haters, to be fair. Just
one more thing as well. They hired Raheem Morris as head coach, a former defensive coordinator and defensive-minded coach. Kirk Cousins has never fared well with defensive-minded coaches. His best reign at the Vikings was under Kevin O'Connell, who was an offensive coordinator for the Rams.
And Kirk always struggles when he's learning a new system. We'll see.
For those of you that would like a little bit of background of who Ollie is the only one of us that's still in education. And you can tell that because he put his hand up when he wanted to speak then. Did anybody else notice?
Because I wouldn't get a chance to speak if I didn't.
Yeah. He knows us, mate. He knows us.
All right, so pick number 1 went to Dan. He chose the Atlanta Falcons. He thinks that they are going to increase their stock enough to give him, enough points this season. And that meant that we were on to pick number 2. And pick number 2 went to practice squad punt. Ollie, we'll explain the names a little bit later. Ollie, crack on.
So I picked the Los Angeles Chargers for the second overall pick. They were the team that stood out to me out of all the NFL teams that performed poorly last year. And the improvements that they've made in the offseason, I think, were more significant than that of many of the other teams around them. I think Jim made a good choice later on, and we'll get to that. But the Chargers finished 5-12, and they do have a tough division. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs are in there, so under Patrick Mahomes, they're always expected to win that division pretty much. And then you've got the Raiders and the Broncos. The Raiders, I think, will massively improve with Antonio Pierce, but we'll get to that later as well. They've hired Jim Harbaugh as a head coach who won the national championship in college football, if anyone follows that, with Michigan Wolverines. JJ McCarthy is their quarterback, and he'll repeat winning a championship next season, but we'll get to that next year on Utter Punts. I think Jim Harbaugh's a great coach. I think he's a coach with a winning mindset. He's got a brilliant record both in the NFL and college. And the thing the Chargers had that these other teams around them who performed poorly didn't have, they have a franchise quarterback. Justin Herbert is probably a top 6 quarterback in the league. And the reason they regressed as a team and performed so poorly was because of Brandon Staley, who should have been sacked long before he was. He lasted 3 seasons. He should have never lasted that long. especially after they bottled the playoffs a couple of seasons ago to Jacksonville. And they've added Joe Alt in the draft, offensive tackle, to block for Herbert, who desperately needed protection. I just think they're going to be a physical, nasty team to come up against, and there's no way they're going to do as poorly as last season.
I fully agree with you, Ollie. I think Jim Harbaugh himself is probably worth 5 wins at least, just on his own. So my expectation for the Chargers is to move to at least 10 wins this year. I don't have the optimism in the Raiders that you do, to be honest, on that one, but we'll discuss that when we get to that pick. But when you look at their defense, they've got Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa coming off the edge. And then you go to the only weak spot really for me on the Chargers is at wide receiver. They had some cap problems this year, so they ended up releasing Mark Williams and Keenan Allen, I think. So they're down to, is it Quentin Johnson, who they selected in the first round a couple of years ago?
And he wasn't this coach either.
No, and that was a Staley special. So that's the only concern. But Jim Harbaugh loves to pound the rock. They're going to be a run-first team. They're set up to be a run-first team, so that'll be fine in that respect. And like I said, I think personally, Harbaugh's worth 5 wins on his own, for just from a competency perspective. So I fully expect them to significantly outperform last year's performance.
My only reservation is their OC. He's very much a run-first guy. Didn't have that much imagination. He was formerly at Baltimore, right? So that's my only reservation. I'm not overly convinced that they're going to run an offense which is suited to modern day NFL, but at the same time, so many defenses have got smaller now. But when you do go run first, and you've got a 6'5", 6'6" QB in Herbert, who can carry the rock if you want him to as well, then they'll find a way of moving the ball. But I'm not expecting them to be overly explosive in the passing game, unless they really get the run game going and start playing play action off the back of it. But yeah, I agree. They should have been the number 1 overall pick. I've no idea what Dan was doing.
Dan will have spotted something. Knowing the way that he operates, he'll have spotted something in there that that concerned him enough not to pick the Chargers. I don't know what that is. We'll have to find out from him further down the track
Quinn
exactly
says
what
it's
he was
the OC
thinking.
from Baltimore.
You reckon?
Is it Greg Roman? Yeah, he was Harbaugh's offensive coordinator at the 49ers as well, though. So there's differing measures of success with that one. So jury's out on it a little bit. I don't care for the Baltimore Ravens, so anything that sees them struggle isn't an automatic positive for me. So yeah, it is what it is. But I again echo the sentiments that this was a solid pick and probably should have been number 1.
I appreciate the how polite you were there, Jim. I don't care for the Baltimore Ravens. I thought that was very well moderated, mate. Congratulations. How far do we see the Chargers going? Just like a quick 1 sentence from all of you. Ollie, how far are the Chargers going this season?
Probably wild card.
Okay. Jim?
I was going to say wild card for me as well. Yeah.
Dave?
They might get through the wild card. Jim Harbaugh in a playoff game. You know they'd run through walls if they make it to the wild card. I just don't think they've got the levels of talent needed to get past that, really.
All right.
I think they need receivers to get further. So.
I think that's interesting that everybody's sort of on a very similar page about the Chargers. So keep an eye on them. Also keep an eye on the comments down below on the YouTube videos that we're putting out there, because I'm sure that Dan will reply, so you'll be able to see exactly what's going on and why he picked the Falcons instead of the Chargers' first round pick. Also, whilst we're talking about YouTube, don't forget to just share us with a pal. If you can hit the like button and hit subscribe, it makes such a massive difference to these videos, like absolutely huge in terms of the way that YouTube works. So we'd really appreciate just you hitting that thumbs up and smashing the subscribe button as well. That'd be absolutely lovely. On to pick number 3 and over to the unexploded World War II bomb that is Dave Keane.
I've gone with the New York Jets, who picked 10th overall last year, but I think with Aaron Rodgers coming back, that's an impetus. He might be worth 2 or 3 wins in his own right. They got to 7 wins last year. It was a losing record, but 2 additional wins puts it 9-7. They make the playoffs probably. So For me, it's one of those where Rodgers is coming back. I think their defense is really good. I think their head coach Salah might well be in a bit of trouble if the team don't show some massive improvement now that Rodgers is back. And more than anything, looking at their division, the Bills literally have no wide receivers, like none. Like they don't have a wide receiver room anymore. So there's going to be an awful lot of pressure on Allen. Their defense last year didn't look that great. They haven't made that many big purchases or trades or even draft picks, which are going to be massively helpful to them. They did a weird thing at the end of the draft last year where they traded out the first round, I think, when they could have taken a decent wide receiver. So all in all, I think the Bills are not going to be as strong. I know people think that Josh Allen's going to be an MVP this year. That'll last as long as he does while he's having to do all of the work. I expect him to get injured at some point this year, I'm afraid. Don't expect him to do that much. The Dolphins are also in the division. The Dolphins have got Tua, who's now started talking on podcasts about how he got on with his previous coach, basically giving people ammunition with which to fire at him. And he's already a sensitive little chap. So bless you, Tua. That was probably a mistake, mate. I can see people trying to get under his skin. I love the head coach of the Dolphins, but all in all, I just feel that there's definitely a route to winning that division this year for the Jets, particularly as the Patriots are god awful. So, yeah, Jets.
I think you're pretty much right on that. I think we've got to watch the turmoil that Aaron Rodgers brings wherever he goes. There's already significant rumours of discontent in the New York Jets locker room over his spotty off-season attendance. So, I think that's one to watch with that one. But I mean, again, it's a case of they either win that division or win 10 games this year, or Salah's gone. And that'll be a shame because I think Salah's actually a pretty good head coach. I think he's a better defensive coordinator than he is head coach, to be perfectly honest. But ultimately, it all rests with Aaron Rodgers and with the Jets. Obviously, from a draft perspective, I think they took an offensive tackle, so nothing particularly sexy on that side of things. So they're pretty much running it back with what they had last year with a couple of minor additions.
Does that sort of suggest that they feel that they were onto something last season before Rodgers picked up that injury? Does that sort of... They just want to give it a go?
They have an unbelievable defence.
Agree.
But that defence got ground down last year by the fact that the offence just couldn't stay on the field. So if you look at the start of last season, the Jets' defence were absolutely crushing teams. After it got past halfway...
That's kind of what I'm saying to you. Like, if you've got a quarterback that can keep that offense on the field, that can find a way to convert those third downs, that can find a way just to squeeze out another set of downs, does that mean that the Jets are dangerous this season?
I think they are potentially dangerous. Like Dave said, I think their defense is great. I mean, they were playing a lot of short field last year because of their people they trotted out at quarterback, like Zach Wilson, Mike White, and people like that. So I do think they're onto something. I think they've also done a better job from an insurance perspective on Aaron Rodgers by bringing in Tyrod Taylor as their backup quarterback. So while there will obviously still be a significant drop-off, he's got the ability to be a game manager and can move the ball, move the chains with his legs as well. So I think ultimately they're looking to simplify the offense if Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, which didn't happen last year. But yeah, I think they're onto something. I think they felt that Aaron Rodgers was somewhat of the missing link for them. I don't agree with that. I still think they're talent deficient on offense as a whole. But ultimately, yeah, I think they will improve. But it all goes down to how Aaron Rodgers is, and does he do an Aaron Rodgers? And if he does, then it could all go tits up by November.
Ollie, anything to add on the Jets?
Yeah, I salute Dave for this pick because I almost picked the Jets at number 2. I'm speaking as a Vikings fan. Our rivals are the Green Bay Packers, and Aaron Rodgers, is a legend there, won a Super Bowl there, got them to playoffs consistently. The media has an agenda against this guy and has had an agenda for years. I don't care about the turmoil or any BS that's been reported on him. This is Aaron Rodgers. It's like getting Tom Brady. It's like getting Brett Favre. If you've got a Hall of Fame quarterback who can still throw that ball down the field, which he could the season before he got injured, you're gonna win. You're gonna get to the playoffs, in my opinion. Like Dave and Jim said, the Jets have a fantastic defense, but I know myself. If you're a defensive player and you have to stay on the pitch too long, you get tired eventually. It needs to be a balanced amount of time of the offense and defense, ideally. You don't you don't want to be on more than the offense, and that obviously, and then injuries happen in the NFL anyway, even without that going on. My only concern, and this is a slight disagreement with Jim, I don't think he's wrong maybe on a coaching and scheming point with Salah, but I don't find him particularly inspiring as a head coach when I hear him talk. I watched the Hard Knock Jets last year. I've watched a lot of his press conferences. For me, there are many better coaches in the NFL. So he's my only concern, but I don't think that matters when you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, who is a leader. You have weapons like Garrett Wilson. You have that defense, Breece Hall as running back. I think the Jets will improve vastly this season.
We shall wait and see. I have a bit of a soft spot for Aaron Rodgers. I hope that he manages to get through this season. And I'd like to see the Jets do well. That pains me as a Giants fan, but, why not? Right, on to 2 picks from Jim, who was the next in the draft. But because obviously he was the last name out of the hat, it means that he gets back-to-back picks. What was the first of those 2, Jim?
So it was the Washington Commanders was the first pick out of the 2. I'll come on to the other one in a minute, but just in terms of the actual logic around this, the 2 teams I selected, I just went on the basis of it can't get much worse. Realistically, the Commanders last year were all over the place under Ron Rivera. They had a 5th round rookie quarterback starting in Sam Howell, or it might have been his 2nd year or something. I didn't think he did too badly, to be honest with you. They've got a number one wide receiver in Terry McLaurin. They've just traded Jahan Dotson because he wasn't going to make the roster. So that's just a further indictment of what the previous regime did. But the noises coming out of the Commanders are massively positive over the offseason. I think Jaden Daniels looks like a really good quarterback, which was what we expected. Myself and David watched a few games of him for LSU last year, and some of the cut-up clips on him as well. He moves well, he throws well, as if he's got the supporting cast, which I think is a work in progress with the Commanders. And look, we're not going from like 4 wins to 12 wins here. We're talking 4 wins to maybe 8 wins or 9 wins. So it's a bit of a steady Eddie pick in this respect. Because my top 2 choices had already gone, to be honest, and I was looking for value. So, yeah, the Commanders, they've got Dan Quinn as their head coach. He's obviously an experienced head coach in the league. I think he was at the Falcons previously, with a bit of a mixed outcome. But I think he's going to go in there, and they've got some real weapons on defense that they can turn around, especially in the middle of their defense in Allen and Daron Payne. So I think then they are bound to a rookie quarterback, but he reminds me a lot of Robert Griffin III when he came through, and they saw a huge improvement when that happened, and then obviously injuries happened and his leg nearly fell off. But other than that, we're going season to season on this one, so the Commanders was my pick.
Who's picking up first, Ollie?
Yeah, I think it's a great pick, to be honest. If I was in Jim's position at 4, it would probably be one of the teams I'd consider between the one he picked at 4 and 5. I'm assuming the Jets and Chargers were your first 2 choices. If you were higher up, I may be wrong.
I'd have gone with the Falcons, mate. Genuinely, but so I don't think Dan's pick was that bad, but. I can't decide if you 2 are just trolling or whether it's actually, Dave looking confused at that accusation. But yeah, I'd have probably gone with the Falcons or the Chargers if it was available. But the Commanders were the next best team, and let's be honest. I mean, sorry for this, Liam, but no one's choosing the Giants unless they had to.
Worst team in the league this season.
But Jaden Daniels, Jim, Dave, and I talked about, the draft, probably about 15, 20 videos or something in the off season. And he's a good quarterback. I think that he's a much improvement on Sam Howell. I agree with Jim as well. I don't think he did that bad. He was just in a horrible situation. I thought Ron Rivera, he looked poor. He didn't have any control over what was going on. Scary Terry is a great wide receiver as well. And, he's needed some service, and I think he may finally have some. Also, Christian McCaffrey's brother, am I right in saying he's on the team? Luke McCaffrey is
Luke
wide
McCaffrey.
receiver.
Looks an athlete.
And the way but their father has trained both of them relentless from children up till now. And you've seen how successful Christian McCaffrey can. If Luke McCaffrey gets anywhere near that, he's going to be a top-end wide receiver for them. And so they may have a great 1-2 there with Terry McLaurin and McCaffrey.
Slight tangent before you carry on, Ollie. Because Christian McCaffrey and his success is now known universally as CMC, does his brother immediately become LMC off the back of that?
I think he does, and I think that's just the romanticism about the whole thing. It's the willingness to connect. I mean, let's be honest. I think it'd be a little bit more prevalent if he was a running back as opposed to a slot wide receiver, because they're only going to get so much.
So you've got run CMC and catch LMC. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, that's pretty much what we're saying, mate. Yeah.
I mean, think about the Gronkowski brothers. There were three of them, but there was only one Gronk. CMC, and I think in order for people to start calling him LMC, he's going to have to catch a pass in the NFL first.
Well, what about the Watt brothers, though? That's the counter argument to
the
your
Manning
Gronk
brothers.
case. Yeah.
What about them? They weren't all no. They weren't all.
Doesn't suit Dave's argument, so we need to move on.
No, they weren't all known as the Manning brothers, though, were they? Like the other brothers are more relevant, but then they weren't all called JJ either, were they?
True.
So
that's fair. Sorry, we interrupted you, Ollie, on something completely tangential. What were you about to finish off saying?
Also, I was just going to say Dan Quinn is a coaching improvement in my opinion, and hopefully can improve that defense as a defense first head coach, which is something that, another area. Like Jim said, the Commanders were just a mess all over. It is a safe pick, but I think he's right. They are going to improve, so why wouldn't he pick them here? You know what I mean? So,
Dan Campbell did once take a really, really ropey franchise to the Super Bowl. He lost, but he took them there.
Dan Campbell's the head coach of the Detroit Lions.
Dan Quinn did.
Dan Campbell nearly did that.
He did.
Yeah, he did, yeah. But that Dan Campbell's a good coach. He just fell apart for him when he was at the Falcons after they kept picking in the draft really badly.
Yeah, I mean, but he was a Dallas defensive coordinator for pretty much the whole of Micah Parsons' tenure, and he's obviously one of the top 3 or 4 edge rushers in the NFL now. So, if they can unearth someone of that ilk, coupled with their interior defensive line, coupled with Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin on offense, then I think like I said at the start, the only way is up for both of my picks in this respect.
They've got Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler running back this year as well, I think.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a good roster. I can see why we think it's going up. I mean, it's definitely moving up from number 2. They're not going to be number 2 overall. No chance. They're going to be much higher than that.
I'm going to keep us rolling, I think, and on to the next pick, Jim, if that's all right.
Yeah, number 5 was the Chicago Bears. Another one where the only way is up in a lot of respects. They've been poor for a few years. They've massively upgraded their roster. They believe they've massively upgraded their quarterback position as well. And if you'd have watched the stuff in the off season, there's the jury's out on that for myself, Dave, and Ollie. I think he has looked pretty good in pre-season, to be honest. And Justin Fields hasn't, so you can see why that even if we don't particularly rate him that highly, it's still going to be an improvement on what they had and whether he can just run the offense. But they've invested heavily in their wide receiver core, their offensive line. their defense has got a hell of a lot better over the last sort of year or so, into when they traded for Sweat from the Commanders, my previous pick. So I think all in all, the Bears are probably primed to win at least probably another 5 or 6 games. I think they're going to be close to being in the playoffs, if not in the playoffs this year. But I do think they'll be a wild card and done team. So yeah, but that was the rationale for that pick.
Dave?
So, I mean, Caleb Williams, he's looked all right. He had training sessions earlier this summer where he had 0 completions on 11 attempts, including 4 picks. He's had other days where he's looked a lot better, but that only happened after they massively simplified what they were asking him to look at. If you look at the preseason games, the few drives that he's looked great when he's been able to basically scramble out of the pocket, look downfield and try to hit someone running open, backyard football. Show me the NFL plays, Caleb. I won't believe in you until you show me the NFL plays. At the moment, you can look great in preseason. I've seen QBs look unbelievable in preseason and not be able to play in an actual league game. So I've had a look at the Chicago Bears Hard Knocks. He's a guy who was speaking to Keenan Allen, a very respected wide receiver in the league. I don't know if anyone picked up on this, but it was obvious to me. Keenan Allen was trying to help him and explain to him what he should be looking for when he's running routes. And Caleb Williams turned his back on him and walked off halfway through a sentence. We'll see how good Caleb Williams is.
This was the concerns that we raised about him.
For me, I don't see it. I don't see it yet. Like, he might well prove me wrong. And in many ways, I want him to, because the Bears having a good quarterback, that'd be good for the NFL, right? But I'm sorry, I'm seeing a petulant young man right now who's not learning the things he needs to learn, which is how to read defenses. You're not going to get very far playing backyard football. Good luck, mate. That's all I'll say to Mr. Williams.
Are they going to win more games this year than last year?
They should do. I mean, look at all of the players he's got around him. It's a star-studded wide receiver cast they've got there with Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and then Roma Dunze. Exciting young player. They've got Cole Kmet playing at tight end. But I think O-line, still not convinced. That's the thing that worries me for him, for Caleb, when they're getting into, people are going to get interior pressure on him. Let's see how he does. And then they're going to know he's going to want to scramble out to his right, out to his left to try and pass. So we'll see about that. But like, this is the thing for me. The Bears roster is a lot stronger than it has been. But they're solely reliant on the OC to bring along the new QB. They don't seem set to bring through a young QB to me. I'm not convinced by the other players that I've got in their QB room either. What I found massively interesting was the fact that when during the preseason games, I can't remember who it was, the Bears. Oh yeah, an undrafted rookie QB came in and looked better than Williams did running their offense.
You're right,
He actually
Ollie.
understood the concepts. So
No, the camera
Just one sec, Dave.
you having camera issues
brilliant.
too?
Yeah.
Ollie's pressed the zoom in button. He's going to put his hand
there
up
is
in a
no
minute to
zoom in
try and
button.
correct it.
If it hears a word, and I think Dave may have said something, it just I got to do it with like fingers and stuff. It's weird camera. Okay.
What is even
Dave's
going
on
on? I
mute.
mean, Dave's muted himself. Ollie's camera's going nuts.
Sort of
Dave's camera's fallen over. Jim's fast asleep because he's jet lagged. This has been
Welcome to the new
sensational.
season.
Unbelievable. Have we got anything else to say on the Chicago Bears, or should we move on to pick number 6?
We need to move on. Let's get on.
All right, Dave has spoken.
Ollie, you agree with everything I said, right?
I was just gonna say it's simple. It's the Chicago Bears and quarterbacks.
Hard to disagree. On to pick number 6, and potentially the least surprising thing I've seen in the last 7 days. Dave.
Well, you say that. The team that I'm picking, I don't think other people would probably have picked. And it's the Minnesota Vikings who, right, I think most people would be looking at where we finished last year, which was 11th worst. and probably thinking we'd be on for something similar this year or even worse. And I understand that. But those people aren't aware of the strides that have been made in the team building of the Vikings this offseason. Sam Darnold was brought in as a quarterback who was there to basically be a professional hand to hand things over to JJ McCarthy. He's out for the year. I think that's probably the ideal. I didn't want to see him brought in too early. He gets a year of sitting. It's only a meniscus repair, which is percentage-wise, you don't not fail to come back from a meniscus tear when it's the full repair he's having. It just takes time. So he's going to be out for 5 months. He could probably come back towards the end of the season. That's all good. But what the Vikings have done, what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has done, is basically traded up and got us Dallas Turner, who's a pass rushing stud. He's going to be an unbelievable player in the Flores defense next year. We've got a situation where we already brought in Grenard from the Texans. We swapped Hunter and Grenard. Right, so we've got another pass rusher there. We also brought in Van Ginkel from the Dolphins, a very underrated player according to PFF. So we've now got some top-class pass rush. We found an absolute stalwart player against the run, weirdly, in an undrafted free agent defensive tackle. We've also got an undrafted free agent cornerback who will be starting in this league by the end of the year. He's that damn good. Dwight McLaughlin, well done, sir. And quite honestly, across the depth, you can see the difference in the Vikings' depth based on how we've done in the preseason. Prior to this year, Kevin O'Connell hadn't won a single preseason game with Kirk Cousins, by the way. Not a single one. So I think it was 7 defeats in total, and mostly heavy defeats. We didn't have any strength in depth behind that. We smashed up the Eagles. We did a good job against the Browns. Both teams who I think most people think are going to be contending this year. But our depth looked better than both those teams. And like against the Raiders, which was the first one, they had their first team defense on the field for the entire first half. And we beat them up too. And I think the Raiders' major problem is the fact that they don't actually have any QBs, which is why I'm not quite as high on that one as I am the others. But they do have Max Crosby, who's pretty damn special. So based on what I've seen this year, and based on my experience of previous years, knowing when the Vikings have had, I would say, a hollow, soft underbelly. Right now, the Vikings have got strength in depth pretty much at every position. Our weakest position, I'd argue, is cornerback. We've got Stephen Gilmore been brought in to supplement that. And like I say, we've got this undrafted free agent who will be playing by the end of the season. So in reality, the Vikings only have one weak position in the entire team, not counting QB, and that is nickel corner, which is something I've not been able to say before for the Vikings since I started watching them. Only one weak position. Okay, apart from QB, where I am kind of hoping on Sam Darnold a bit there. But I'm happy to take that camp.
Jim?
I don't agree, to be frank. I think the Vikings are possibly in trouble this year. I think they're going to go as far as Sam Darnold can take them, which on past performance has not been very far. They've got no backups in that room. Nick Mullins isn't anything to write home about, and the one that they've just signed, I can't even remember, Brett Ripon. Again, nothing special there. So there's for lack, you've either got a quarterback or you don't. And at the moment, the Vikings have one, but he's not available to play until next year. So I think they're going to struggle. I think cornerback, to be honest, rookie corners, regardless of where they're drafted, typically find it quite difficult. So an undrafted, pinning your hopes on an undrafted rookie cornerback is concerning for me. To be honest, Gilmore's obviously a bit on the older side as well, but has been a high level corner in the league for a while. So they don't not have corners. I think it could take maybe 6 or 7 games for them to start playing to the level that's needed in this league. So ultimately, I've got the Vikings roughly standing still from where they were last year. I thought it was a little bit early from a pick perspective for them, just in terms of hoping for their improvement. I think if JJ McCarthy was still on the table, then Kyrie Jackson, as we mentioned at the start of the show, if those were both available for use, then Obviously, the story could be a little bit different, but I think, I think they've got the potential to struggle. I don't disagree on the depth piece. I think offensively, all good. I don't think you've got any particularly good running backs, which I think is another weakness on the Vikings team.
Aaron Jones, mate.
Yeah, but he's 29 or whatever he is now.
Just under the age 13. He was the second best running back in the league last year and the best running back in the playoffs.
You're not selling him to me, mate. I'm sorry. So ultimately, I think Vikings are more of a standstill candidate than a serious improvement candidate.
Ulster.
Mike Zimmer got Case Keenum to the NFC Championship game. Mike Zimmer is not as good a coach as Kevin O'Connell, in my opinion. Brian Flores is an absolute genius as a defensive coordinator. What he did with such limited resources on the defense last year was absolutely brilliant. I mean, players that we haven't even mentioned, like Cam Bynum and Josh Metellus, who are absolutely fantastic, absolute studs, I think. Still got Harrison Smith, who's re-signed, Justin Jefferson.
We've got the best safety room in the league, but Jim's right from a perspective of we're really strong, but not at what considered to be key positions. But we are also really strong at some key positions. Our pass rushing depth is probably the best in the league, I think.
We've still got Justin
depth. I said, not starters, mate.
We've still got Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. I know Addison is waiting on the charges that may be coming to him. I don't know how long that'll be, but he'll still be there for the majority of the season, is the assumption. And it doesn't matter when you've got Justin Jefferson, who is the best wide receiver in the NFL. I don't care what anyone says. That is the facts for me. I agree with Dave that Aaron Jones, no matter what Jim thinks of him, is far, far, far better than Alexander Mattison.
I agree with that. I agree it's an upgrade over what you had last year. I just don't think he's a top 15 running back this year.
One of the key points that has also been missed, which is a key problem for the Minnesota Vikings over our entire history, is the kicker position. We've drafted a stud.
Mate, are you really going to come out swinging so hard on the fact we've finally brought in a kicker who's good at kicking?
Will Rijkaard, the Alabama Crimson.
Will Rijkaard for MVP.
We can't make long kicks. We can't make important kicks in the past. I think we've got a guy who can now. I think Kevin O'Connell is a brilliant coach. I think Brian Flores is. For me, the Vikings, I think we'll make the playoffs. I don't think we'll go far in the playoffs. I still think we'll make it. I'm convinced. Isn't going to convince me otherwise. We've done worse with worse players and worse coaches. We've done more, than people are predicting now. People are just underestimating because they like to hate.
I'm going to jump in at this juncture just to point out to anybody that has followed Utter Punts for a long time, you'll be pleased to see that normal service is resumed, and we've spent longer talking about the Minnesota Vikings than we have about any other bloody team so far. Welcome to Utter Punts.
Team of the league, mate. There's no doubt about it. Name another team who's had people die this off the season, who's had a rookie quarterback get injured for the season before they've even played the snap. Never happened in history. So I know that you're anti-Vikings, mate, but they're the only team I care about.
I'm not sure that's a hill that I would like to make my stand on. I nearly said something else then, and that would have been entirely inappropriate. So we're just going to move on and to Ollie's pick before we get ourselves into any trouble. And pick number 7 went to Ollie Keane. Who did you pick, Ollie?
I've picked the Las Vegas Raiders. Now I hear Jim and Dave. They sometimes in this league you have logic, right? You have logic, you have facts, you have statistics, but sometimes you just get a gut feeling. And I've got a gut feeling about Antonio Pierce, about the Las Vegas Raiders, about everything that's surrounding that team. I think sometimes a coach, a personality that can drag a city up, drag an area, drag a team that's not had a voice like that in years, can be more important than the individual quality of players they've got. I understand no one will be convinced by Gardner Minshew as a franchise quarterback because he's not that. He's a stand-in for a franchise quarterback to be drafted or traded for in the future. But he's still got the Indianapolis Colts to 9-8, I think it was last year. The improvement they made with Pierce coming in was significant after the previous head coach was fired. I've just got a gut feeling. That's it. It's not based on any logic. I think
I
the
just
Raiders
think
are
your
gonna
gut feeling's wrong, goal, to be perfectly
I
honest.
was just going to say, sometimes gut feelings are right and sometimes gut feelings are wrong. Which one is this, Jim? But you beat me to it, mate.
Yeah, like I said earlier, you've either got a quarterback or you haven't. The Raiders haven't got one. Gardner Minshew, I love his haircut. I love his mustache. He can't throw the ball past about 20 yards. He's got no long game. So they've got Devontae Adams, who is just wasting away in Las Vegas. To be honest, I mean, his worst places to waste away, to be honest. But on that side, I think defensively, and Pierce is obviously a defensive based coach, so I think defensively they'll be pretty sound. I just struggle to see them scoring enough points to be competitive this year on the whole. And I actually think they're probably more inclined to not win than they are to win, because they need to be in a position to draft a quarterback in the top 5 next year, and barring a very expensive trade up, which isn't ideal for any franchise. They're going to want. I expect them to be wanting to position themselves, and I think they've taken that. They've taken the risk with the quarterbacks that they've got, with that peace in mind that, if it does go as I expect, not as Ollie expects apparently, but they can get Shador Sanders or Carson Beck from Georgia for their starting quarterback next year and reset that clock. But at the moment, I think they just don't have that quarterback in place that they need, and as a result, they're going to get worse before they get better.
Before Dave decides to jump in and have a word here, I just need to tell him to unmute his microphone, otherwise he's going to start talking and then we won't be able to hear him. So once he's unmuted his microphone, I'll let him jump in and have his say on this pick.
I've said what needed to be said. I've got a gut feeling. Jim's argued against it. I have no idea why the team that finished 13th last year has just been picked like 7th overall to improve. If Ollie's gut feeling turns out to be correct, when he can rub this right in our faces.
I want a 10-minute segment dedicated to Ollie saying "I told you so." To be honest with you,
it'll happen. Trust me, I'm going to give him that platform.
Good.
Only thing I'll say is they have Max Crosby, right? Who is the most driven human being I've seen. He literally spars like UFC fighters for fun, and I respect him enough not to beat him up for getting in there with him. That's Sean Strickland, who has beaten people up for thinking that they should be in there with him. So like Crosby's absolute dude, absolute animal, loving to bits.
Final say, Ollie, goes to you.
I love defense. I love what Antonio Pierce is doing. I don't care. These boys are going to bring out more stats and statistics than I can. More stats and more facts than I can about how the Raiders are going to be worse. I don't think so. I just feel it. I've got that feeling. And we'll see at the end of the season.
We'll take it. And that rounds up sort of pick 7. So Dan was then back-to-back with 8 and 9. So I'll give you what Dan said. If we probably need to just sort of speed through the next couple, otherwise we're going to be way over our time limit, which we already are, which we knew was going to happen anyway. It was always going to be long and meandering. We always knew it was going to be the case. 8th pick overall was the Cardinals. Dan reckons that they weren't as competitive as they should have been last season because franchise quarterback was on the sidelines to start the year. They are now dangerous, and with Marvin Harrison Jr. at wide receiver, now think that they could go on and win games. They only need to not be terrible, says Dan, which I think is the big question overall, isn't it, on whether or not they're actually going to be where they need to be. He also points out at the end of here that they've got an easy schedule, given a tricky couple of years, which is quite interesting too. Let's all just really have a quick whiz round on what we think about that. We'll start with you, Ollie. Cardinals at pick 8.
My only thing is I'm noticing on the sheet that the only team that didn't get their full name listed is the Cardinals. They didn't get the Arizona Cardinals. It just says Cardinals. I think that shows what people think of them as a franchise. But I agree with Dan. They're not going to be as crap as they were last year. Simple. That's it.
Fair. Jim?
They're in an incredibly difficult
That's
division, to
where
be
I was
honest with
going.
you.
Yeah.
I look at them against everybody in their division, apart from the Rams, and maybe say they're still talent deficient. I don't think they've got a lot at corner. I don't think their tackle situations are particularly set. They've obviously got Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray's back. Kyler Murray's Kyler Murray. He's great one week and then bang average the week after, if not head scratching from an interceptions perspective. So for me, bit of a. I don't disagree with the pick. I think it's probably in the right range. I'm not sure how much they can physically improve just because of the competition in their division.
Yeah, finished 4th worst overall last season, been picked 8th overall this time, so maybe there's a little bit of headroom. Dave, final say on this one goes to you.
It's Kyler Murray. If there's no new card, they'll be fine.
Beautiful. And so concise. I appreciated that. 9th pick overall went to the Indianapolis Colts, who were 15th worst last season. Dan says it's a winnable division. And in the games quarterback Anthony Richardson played, they actually were pretty good. And that was without Jonathan Taylor, who's also back, which is key for Dan. They could be very good and could make playoffs at their best, he reckons. It's amazing, isn't it, what a player like Jonathan Taylor can do when they are fit and available. It just gives you a completely different string to your bow when you've got somebody as capable as he is, Dave.
So Jonathan Taylor's a great player. Kieran Richardson as well. He's a player that Jim and I quite liked when he was coming out in college. One of the issues with him was his inability to throw the ball with touch. Like he hadn't had a lot of snaps. So there were some issues with him reading the game. But in terms of physical attributes, you'd have thought that he was a custom character on a computer game, right? He's big, he's quick, he's got an excellent arm. Like in terms of when he's throwing the ball with power, oh yeah, he's good. In the backfield with Taylor, who do you stop? They're going to have to go RPO heavy. And if they go RPO heavy, then like the run pass option is on. The only issue that I've got is Richardson got concussed very early on last year, and that's the kind of thing that can repeat itself. So hopefully he's taken some Tua-style steps and learned a bit of judo or something to stop himself from getting concussed again. But he is someone who, like I say, I didn't feel that he had the touch pass ability. However, when he started last year, he showed more than I expected. But I've heard rumours there's been a bit of a regression on that this off-season. So I'm intrigued to see how it goes with him. But I do expect them to do solidly well. I can see them making the playoffs to the outside. That would be a 6-point jump or something. So, yeah, not a bad shout at all from that.
Just for clarity's sake, it is definitely Anthony Richardson and not the former Manchester United and Sunderland winger Kieran Richardson.
Do you know what, mate? I wonder where that came from. Show my age. Love it.
Jim, anything on this?
Yeah, I think the Colts will be okay. I think the biggest concern is with Anthony Richardson. When a rookie quarterback comes in, last, 4 games or whatever it was, including a concussion and destroying his non-throwing shoulder. I think that's a concern, and that probably reads into the rumours of him regressing from a touch perspective because he just wants to get rid of that ball as quickly as possible. So you've got to wonder if there's a bit of hearing footsteps from a quarterback perspective, which Tom Brady famously said he's done that. So it's not the end of the world. It just could take some time to settle down. Offensive line's good, running back's good, wide receivers good. So I think they should improve. I expect.
Cool. Right, so we said we were going to do the top 10 in this one. We've got 1 pick left to go to complete the first 10 picks of the Utter Punts draft, and that goes to Ollie. Ollie, who have you picked at 10?
I've picked the Cincinnati Bengals at 10. Now, I know they were 18th on the draft order last year, the way they finished, sorry. At this point, I was kind of thinking, who should I pick? You've got a couple teams that were really bad last year that were still left, Carolina, the Giants, Tennessee, but I just didn't see any of them improving by that much. Bengals lost Joe Burrow, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. They didn't make the playoffs. They definitely would have made the playoffs with Joe Burrow there. Doesn't matter. Like O-line, okay, he had a crap O-line and got to the Super Bowl and was close to winning. He's still got Jamar Chase, still got T. Higgins, still got the same coach. It's not a new scheme he's learning. He'll probably come back stronger. He is a top 3 quarterback probably in this league, maybe top 4. I don't know. I love Joe Burrow. I just think the Bengals are going to make playoffs. I mean, I think they'll go further than just a wild card as well. So I think they're going to be a big improvement. I was looking down the list, and obviously they're quite a bit later than a lot of the teams. But I just think they're going to make a significant improvement. You can't not when you've got such a key figure coming back to your team.
I agree with everything you said. The only caveat I'd put on that is the moving part with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Obviously, T. Higgins' contract has been a bone of contention for most of the offseason. He's requested a trade, and now Jamar Chase there's rumours of him actually doing a hold-in into the season until he gets paid 1 cent more than Justin Jefferson does at the Vikings. So I think that's a little bit of that's the only moving part on that one. But Joe Burrow coming back is huge for the Bengals. Like you say, he's definitely a top 5 quarterback. And yeah, I think he's a leader as well, which is the big piece that they missed last year. Their roster's in good shape. So I think the Bengals are primed for improvement this year.
Dave, anything that you want to add to this?
Just that I saw Joe Burrow recently, and he's cut his hair short and dyed it like platinum blonde.
What was he having a coffee in Spark Hill or something?
Mate, it was on an interview, but I'll tell you something. It doesn't half look like Slim Shady when Slim Shady was first bursting onto the scene. So I'm expecting him to be coming out all guns blazing this year.
Let's hope so.
It's going to be fun. I don't think he's going to be holding his mouth back, and I'm looking forward to some of the content.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that too. Right, so we've got to the end of the top 10 picks. This is where, if you're watching on YouTube, we're going to say cheerio and we'll see you on the next one. But if you're listening to the podcast, we're going to go all the way through till we've got to the end of all of the teams that we've decided to pick. So if you're watching this first YouTube video, make sure you've liked and subscribed, and that will make sure that we are in your feed for the next time out, especially if you hit that little notifications bell. That would be absolutely brilliant. If you could do that, it helps us out hugely. Quick rundown of the picks, starting from the first pick to the last one. We went Atlanta Falcons for Dan, Chargers for Ollie, Jets for Dave. Then Jim went Commanders, Bears, Dave went the Vikings, Ollie went the Raiders, Dan went the Cardinals, then the Colts, and Ollie rounded out the top 10 with the Cincinnati Bengals. We will see you next time if you're watching on YouTube. And if you are listening on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from, we will be back with you in just a moment.